Okay, good afternoon, everybody. How is everyone doing? Nice to kind of see you all. My name's Dan. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Give me a big thumbs up, just in case. Excellent, good. Yeah, okay, we're good, excellent. My name is Dan, and I am here speaking on Lizzie's YouTube, of course. Earth Live Lessons, fantastic initiative. Well done, Lizzie. Great job. Absolutely loving all the content and all the speakers. I'm right now. I'm in Mallorca in the Mediterranean Sea, and Lizzie has asked me to talk about what is my favorite subject. So I'm very grateful to her for that. And the title I've given is "Relax, You Look Nothing Like a Seal." Which I will get onto why that is the case in a little moment. As always, feel free to ask questions. I'll keep an eye. Any questions that are coming in, I'll probably try and answer at the end. I'm not going to talk too much about myself. If you want to know a little bit more about my background, I did a TED talk last year where I talk a little bit about how I got into all this and stuff. That's linked below. But just a very brief background is that I am an underwater cinematographer. I have been filming sharks for the last few years. The reason I became a scuba diver, the reason I picked up an underwater camera is sharks. They're the reason that I got into doing all of this sort of stuff. And they're the animal that I am most fascinated by. These are some beautiful lemon sharks in the Bahamas. This is a blue shark in the UK. That was last September. And these are some oceanic blacktips, which are in South Africa. Actually, on this particular shoot, we were filming a presenter at the surface who was delivering a line to camera about how sharks don't bite people. And so we were filming him in the water. I was right next to him in the water. And the guys on the boat were throwing fish at him to try and get the sharks to get really close to him. It was one of the most exciting shark dives and shark filming experiences I've done for quite a while. But yes, absolutely obsessed by sharks. I've been pretty much my entire life. But the one that I am talking to you guys about today is this one. Now, this is probably the most famous shark on the planet. You probably watching this already know something about this animal. It's the most infamous creature out there. It's a very, very famous fish. It's the one I've been obsessed with pretty much my entire life, and it's the one that I actually worked with before I ever picked up a camera. I learned more about shark behavior before I started filming them underwater, and I think that helped a little bit with understanding certain behaviors and understanding certain things about sharks. The camera side of it sort of came a little bit later on. I'm going to talk specifically about the hunting strategy of a great white shark, which you probably already know a little bit about, but I want to just look at how understanding their hunting strategy actually helps us understand a little bit about human and shark interaction. Great white sharks are found all over the world. There are a number of different hotspot areas that are places where you can see them better than others. And the reason for that is that's where their prey is more abundant. So that would be places like South Africa, South Australia. This is where we know there are places where there are seal colonies, large seal colonies that are, of course, bringing the sharks in. But where you have sharks that are hunting in lots of different parts of the world, they hunt various different prey items. And because they hunt different prey items, it means they have to have different strategies in the way that they hunt. In the same way that a group of killer whales in Argentina hunting seals on the beach would beach themselves to grab the seals. And that's, of course, very different to the killer whales in the Antarctic that are hunting minke whales. It's all very different strategies for the prey that they are pursuing. For example, in this part of the world, off the coast of California, there's an island called Fowlong Islands, which is 30 miles off of the coast. I've been there. It's a absolutely stunning, very surreal part of the world, home to thousands and thousands of seabirds, but also large Californian sea lions, and also these guys, elephant seals, which are enormous. Now, if you imagine being a predator trying to take down a prey item like this, you have to be equally as big. And that's why in the California area, we tend to see much larger great white sharks. When I say larger, I mean 4 meters plus, because anything less than that, you wouldn't stand a chance taking down something like an elephant seal. Perhaps they wouldn't go for a big bull like this, but even the females are fairly bulky. But the interesting thing about how great white sharks hunt elephant seals is that elephant seals are deep diving mammals, one of the deepest diving mammals out there. So it's no good for the shark to have a strategy of hunting on the surface, because that's not where these guys spend their time. So most of the predations on elephant seals happen deeper down, and then you see them bring them up to the surface to consume. In contrast with prey like this, this is a Cape fur seal, which is found in South Africa, all along the South African coastline. These guys will spend much more time at the surface. In fact, when they're leaving their island, most of these islands are called Seal Island. It's very creative. You'll see them all grouped together, and they'll do what's called porpoising on the surface. They basically get in the water, usually in the same place off of the island, and they make a beeline for open water. That first half a mile stretch from where they get in off the island to when they're in the safety of open water, that's the most dangerous part, and that's where the white sharks do most of their hunting. And so the white sharks have perfected a strategy for hunting an animal that spends its time at the surface in that way. It's very difficult to catch a Cape fur seal. You might think that it's the helpless seal and it's the big scary shark, and that's not the case. In fact, these guys are predators themselves, and they have been known to eat things like other sharks, like blue sharks and thresher sharks as well. So this is a very dangerous animal to try and actually hunt. So for a great white shark to decide to hunt an animal like this, a predator in itself, you have to come up with a strategy that is going to do least damage to yourself. I'm just going to show you a few clips of some of the injuries that I've seen on some sharks. And I wanted to show you guys because I actually only found this, I realized I had this clip about a week ago when I was looking for something else. As this shark goes up, this was taken on a cage diving boat in South Africa, where I did most of my work. And you'll see in just a moment, as the shark comes out of the surface here, a huge chunk out of the back of its dorsal fin, just here, most likely to be from a seal. This shark is a relatively young one. It's about 2.5, maybe near 3 meters. So it's still developing its hunting strategy when it comes to hunting seals. And very often, the shark gets it wrong. Great white sharks and all shark species, unlike mammals, have to learn how to hunt themselves. With killer whales or orcas, they will often teach each other, the mother will teach its young how to hunt. Amazing videos of mother orcas pushing their calves onto the beach so that they can learn to get back off. Great white sharks don't have that. Every time they have to learn by themselves, and that involves a lot of trial and error. So only 50% of the time when these sharks are hunting seals, they get it right. 50% of the time. If they don't get it right, then the seal will either fight back or just get away. This is the same shark as that clip just now. And this time you'll see a lot of the markings and these scars around the eye of the shark and going back towards the gills as well. You can see all these scratches here. Definitely seal marks, where the seal has seen the shark coming and turned around and said, you know what? You're not taking me down today. Let's do this. And it has fought back. And the shark can't risk that. The shark can't risk any injury to itself. Its eyes are so important to it. It relies on its eyesight for hunting. Of course, its gills are so important to it. It relies on its gills for breathing. So that is why great white sharks have come up with a strategy to hunt seals in the most effective way possible. And this is the part where you probably feel like you might already know a little bit about what's coming. This is a seal decoy. This isn't a real seal. Again, this is in South Africa. And in just a moment, there you go. This is the strategy that great white sharks have perfected when it comes to hunting seals. Now, as spectacular as that is, the reason they hunt like that is self-preservation. They can't risk any injury to themselves. So they have to hit that seal first time on the surface as hard as they possibly can. And it's that first hit on the surface that is going to take down that seal in that one hit. And then what they'll tend to do is stay back a little bit, let the seal die from its injuries, and then come back and consume safely. What they don't want to do is come back in when the seal is still struggling, still fighting, because that can still be dangerous for the shark as well. I've seen many predations where the shark hits the seal and then you don't see the shark again for another 5 minutes. It's just waiting for the seal to eventually die so it can have a much safer meal. What I'm going to do now is just introduce you to some of my favorite sharks, or some of the sharks that I got to know quite well in South Africa, where all these photos are taken. This one, first of all, I just wanted to show you because it's kind of cool. I don't know how well you'll see it, but you can just about see there's a mark on the base of the dorsal fin of the shark, and it's more or less the shape of a heart. So we named this shark Sweetheart because of that shape, and that actually makes it much easier for us to identify her. If scientists who weren't on the boat at the time that she turned up, if we could just tell them, yeah, we had Sweetheart around the boat, instantly they know which shark we're talking about. This is one of my favorite sharks that I got to know quite well. Her name is Dottie, partly because you can see she's got 2 dots at the base of her dorsal fin, which again makes her easy to identify, but also her personality. She is a little bit Dottie, so a very charismatic shark. One useful thing about this photo, which is kind of helpful to know, is sometimes it's quite difficult to estimate the size of a shark when it just swims past the boat. So what we ended up doing was, you can see the cage here along the bottom. We know that our cage is 3.3 meters long. And you can see Dottie at the moment is more or less, I mean, you can just about see off the end there, she is more or less the same size as our cage. So when we then did a measurement using lasers on this shark, and it came back that she was 2.9 when this photo was taken. So it's a relatively safe way of being able to guess how big a shark is when it's alongside your boat. Now, Dottie she's one of my favorite sharks because she's just so curious. Every time she would swim past our cage, whether there are people in there or not, she would do what's called mouthing, where she would basically swim up to the cage and just almost tap the cage with her jaws. This is her doing it right on the corner of the cage. It's like a very quick bite and release. And that's Dottie's way of exploring and working out what this strange object in the water is made of. I've seen that done by many, many different sharks. The most spectacular, by a long way, is this one, Trix. Trix, when this photo was taken, was about 4.5 meters. So a very large female shark. Before I talk about mouthing, just to point out as well, something that is quite interesting is that you can see here her eye is wide open. You might have seen some videos where sharks are breaching or attacking things, biting things, and they actually roll their eyes into the back of their head to try and protect them. Whereas Trix isn't doing that. Her eye is wide open. So you can tell from this photo that automatically it's not an attack. It's something different. She's much more interested and curious, and she's looking around to try and figure out what this thing is. Now, if I was to show you a video of what it actually looks like, a large shark mouthing our cage, I filmed this on my iPhone. This is Trix, same shark. Watch how carefully and how cautiously she just kind of puts her jaws over the side of the cage. A shark this size, if she really wanted to destroy that cage, I'm not sure we could do anything about it. But what you're seeing there is a much more curious behavior from a very, very large and capable, powerful shark. Now, where that gets really interesting and when it comes to talking about sharks and people is that I often hear this case of where you hear a case of mistaken identity, where a shark has bitten a person, and the reason for that is often given that the shark mistook that person for its own food, like a seal or a sea lion. When you think about the way that these sharks are behaving in this sort of curiosity manner, in the curious way, I have a hard time believing the whole mistaken identity theory, and here's why. Because if a great white shark looked up at the surface where it's looking for its food, and saw a human, a surfer, swimming on the surface, and wasn't sure and thought that it was its own food, like a swimmer or a sea lion, then that shark would go for that human in exactly the same way it does for a seal or a sea lion. They would full on breach 20 miles an hour, absolutely no messing around. And yet when we hear about sharks biting people, which really doesn't happen very often, but when we do hear about it, it's usually a much less severe injury, maybe a loss of a limb or something like that. Only 17% of people bitten by sharks lose their lives. I think if great white sharks were targeting people in the same way they're targeting their natural food, there would be no way we would survive that kind of impact. But they really don't. And I think that's because they're much more curious about something swimming in the ocean. I'm not going to give you too many facts about sharks and fatalities. You can Google most of these, but it really is amazing when you think about how many opportunities these animals have to make mistakes. I mentioned before, it's all about trial and error when it comes to these sharks learning. And yet they really make very few mistakes when you think about how many chances they have to make them. Another cool thing that I just want to just mention here is a lot of people tend to believe that great white sharks have black eyes, maybe something to do with the way that Quint describes their eyes in the film Jaws. But actually, I don't know, and I don't know how well you'll see. You can just about see here, this shark, its eye is actually blue, and it's looking kind of this way. And when you have a shark that swims right past you, and you can see its eye following you around its, in its eye socket, you really do see a bit more of character and a bit more of personality. And this animal stops becoming just a scary monster and is much more character driven. Great white sharks are one of the most personality driven animals on the planet. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. Cool. I mean that's the bulk of what I was going to say about the behavior and about the personalities. From a practical filming side of things, on the in Mossel Bay, where all these photos were taken, we work in an area called Seal Island, which is 800 meters from the shore. And never in history has there been an attack or a fatal attack, actually, or any kind of attack on a swimmer or surfer on the beach right next to Seal Island, which again, I find that amazing, but it really does, again, go to show that these animals know what their food is. If they were making loads of mistakes all the time, there was no way we could go swimming in areas where there are sharks hunting, which we do every single day, at least we used to. Awesome. Okay, I am on 17 minutes, so I'm going to break there and make sure I don't run out of time for questions, or Lizzie will be furious. Okay, so let's see. Sarah, why sharks? Not sure. I think my granny knitted me a little soft toy great white shark when I was 2 weeks old. That's probably the reason. Do you ever get afraid of sharks? No. I've never had a situation where I felt like I was in any kind of threat from a shark, but I've probably been in situations where I'd feel like the risk was higher than normal, but that's down to human decisions, not shark decisions. Currently studying marine biology, and particularly intrigued British sharks and their populations. Is something that would be appropriate for a dissertation topic? Heck yeah, absolutely. I think people often get surprised actually about that there are large numbers of sharks in the UK. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that, Sophie, as a topic. And reach out if you need any help getting in touch with people who know more about that sort of stuff. I can try and help you out on that one. Question from Instagram: why don't we have marine mammal eating sharks in the UK? Great. Yeah, UK sharks. I thought this one was going to come up. There was a test that the BBC did a few years ago. A friend of mine was involved in filming it, where they had a dead humpback whale carcass, I think it was, and they towed it out into the Celtic Deep to try and see what would turn up. Best way to attract sharks like this is with a whale carcass. And no great whites, but they had over 200 blue sharks, which is, to my knowledge, the largest gathering of blue sharks that we know of in European waters at any one time. So there are lots of sharks in British waters. Blue sharks aren't quite big enough to take down something like a seal, so the seals are safe from them. But yeah, we do have a lot of sharks in British waters. But with the great whites, that one's open for debate. I'm going to try not to get too much into are there great white sharks in the UK, because that is a never-ending debate. How much does a great white eat in one day? It all depends on what's available. Great white sharks are they're predatory hunters, but they're also excellent scavengers. The way that these sharks deal in energy, in currency, is with energy. So if they can get more energy back from eating something that didn't take them energy to get, they're going to do that every single time, which is why so many sharks turn up when there is a whale carcass. It happens in South Africa every now and again. And the number of sharks there is just incredible, because when you have that opportunity to get back your energy, bear in mind, these guys are swimming around all the time. So that's using up energy all the time. And which, by the way, when you see a shark in the shallows, which happens quite a lot now that we have drones and we can see them, and you see a shark like literally where a shark like this, literally where the waves are breaking, often that's because they don't have to use so much energy swimming in an area of water like that, because the water is already moving so fast. That means they don't have to swim so hard to get the water passing over their gills. So that is why they do that sometimes. Any sightings of white sharks in South Africa? Yes, in Mossel Bay, where I was working, they've actually got great white sharks right now. Of course, no one's able to go and see them. It is slightly different in places where the killer whales have been turning up. It is the same 2 killer whales that have been predating on great white sharks. But sharks have this incredible sense, it seems, where anytime a pod of killer whales just move through an area, they disappear. They know it's a threat. So yes, it has been well documented in Cape Town and Gansbaai, the other 2 places where there's cage diving in South Africa. I'm not sure when their last shark sighting was this year in those 2 places, but I know in Mossel Bay that the sharks are back now. In fact, I think my friend Mark, who's just come back from South Africa, might be able to confirm that. Are you able to research without baiting? The answer to that is kind of, but it depends on what species you're trying to attract. A lot of the time when you're trying to get close to a shark, unfortunately now the only option is to bait, because these sharks are so spread out in the ocean. It does make it very, very difficult. Of course, animals like basking sharks, whale sharks, it's quite difficult to bait for a basking shark unless you have a bunch of plankton in a bucket. I'm not sure how that would work. But with the great white, there really isn't any way of getting close to them, as in bringing them to your boat, without using bait. This example is from a cage diving operator. So that means that there's people that have paid money to come out and see sharks. Now, these boats don't go to places where there aren't already sharks. So they have to go to the areas like Seal Island, for example, where we know the sharks are already there. And then what the bait does is it just brings them that extra 10, 15, 50 meters, however far they are in that little area, to be able to come to the boat. I hope that answers that question. John, best dive spot. Do you mean with sharks or just generally? With sharks, you can't really see more species in a short space of time than in the Bahamas. Bimini, probably the best shark dive spot. South Africa is phenomenal. Most recently, actually, probably my favorite shark encounters, it wasn't technically a dive, but encounters, was in the UK. Blues and basking sharks, absolutely phenomenal experience with basking sharks, which is up in Scotland. Okay, I'm going over on time. Lizzie, I hope you're okay with this. Feel free to shout at me if not. Is there any organizations that offer shark-oriented internships? Yes, absolutely. There are loads of brilliant internships, and that's actually the best way to get hands-on experience straight away. That's how I got involved in starting to work with sharks. I had no scientific background before I did any of this, and I did an internship program with this place in Mossel Bay. If you want their details, feel free to chuck me a message. I can let you know. But yeah, internships are absolutely a brilliant way of getting involved and getting hands-on experience, which of course you now need to be able to offer yourself to wider projects. Bimini Shark Lab is another fantastic outfit. But yes, there are lots of really, really good internships. I can't recommend those enough. That's Mark commenting. Great, thank you. Awesome. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for tuning in with all your questions. Don't forget, this is part of Earth Live Lessons, so there is another talk in 2 hours' time about tracking animals, which is fairly interesting. But for now, thanks very much for tuning in, and hope you're all good. See you guys soon.